All right, welcome to this presentation for Azure Back to School. My name is Barrett Blake, and this is a hands-on overview to building AI solutions with AI Builder in Power Automate. So we're going to be talking about Power Automate and its AI capabilities this time around. And we'll start with just a couple of informational things, starting with a little bit about me. So I'm a Microsoft MVP for Power Automate and for business applications. See a bunch of other stuff out there about me. I won't go through all that, but in general, I'm a speaker, blogger, and I like to share, uh, the benefits of Power Automate with everyone, and that's what I'm doing here for Back to School, Azure Back to School this year. So just a little bit about our agenda here. So we're going to talk a little bit in general about what Power Automate is and what it's capable of, and then specifically about the AI Builder capabilities of Power Automate. And then we'll go through some demos, and at the very end, I'll talk a little bit about licensing, which is, the never-ending complication of Microsoft. So what is Power Automate? So Microsoft's workflow designer for designing and implementing, personal workflow automation. It's the best way to describe it. It's out there to make your business processes on a personal level easier and automated. It's not, designed for heavy duty, large scale, large volume kind of things. It's for the day-to-day worker and helping to implement automation to make their lives easier. Automating processing of an Excel spreadsheet, or automating the handling of some emails, or file processing, just minor things that somebody might be doing on a day-to-day basis as part of their job, and automating that to make their life easier. So Power Automate has two versions, and the primary version is the web or cloud-based version. There is also a desktop version, which I'll talk about in my other video for Back to School, which is the RPA, or Robotic Process Automation. But the primary component for Power Automate is their cloud-based solution. It's GUI designer. It's drag and drop. It's very simple to design and implement solutions, especially now with Copilot implementation. I have other videos that talk about Copilot, and we'll be doing some more of those later. But it's basically there to enable citizen developers to automate their own business processes. And it's, like I said, it's intended for low volume applications. If you need something heavy duty, something that can handle high volumes of traffic, then you need to look at Logic Apps. That's the industrial strength version of Power Automate, if you look at it that way. So this talk in general assumes that you have at least a basic understanding of Power Automate, or workflow tools in general. There's a bunch of them out there. They're all targeted at various different things. Power Automate is targeted at business users. If you're looking for something to target, your personal life, then look at something like IFTTT. If this, then that. But there are a bunch of other solutions out there as well. So the AI Builder component of Power Automate can be used to quickly add some elementary AI capabilities to your application or to your workflow. It takes minimal setup, minimal preparation. There's a lot of stuff that's pre-built, and we'll talk about some of that as we go through things that are out there to make your life easier. It's basically, out in Azure, they have a bunch of AI capabilities that they've added to the Azure platform. AI Builder is basically a simplified interface to some of those capabilities, so that you can easily and quickly implement some of those capabilities into your personal business workflows. So that's what Power Automate is there to accomplish for you. And there's basically two different types of models, because AI solutions are always based around a model of some sort. It may be a chat model, it may be a recognition model of some sort. But in general, there's two different categories of models that AI Builder makes use of. And they're the pre-built models, and some of the capabilities that are there in Power Automate for pre-built models. There's business card reader, there's category classification, which basically looks at text and identifies what it relates to. There's entity extraction, so it goes into an image or a block of text and says, okay, this is a social security number, this is a credit card number, this is a name, that kind of stuff. That's the entity extraction. There's ID reader. It can look at like a driver's license or a passport and it automatically pick out the various pieces of text that it might need from that. There's image description, which basically what that does is looks at an image and says, okay, this is a person, this is a dog, this is a house, that kind of thing. There's key phrase extraction, which basically looks at a block of text, takes, like a chapter of a book and can summarize it for you, or it can take um, like meeting notes from a meeting and says, okay, here are the highlights, kind of thing. There's language detection, so it looks at a block of text and says, okay, this is English, this is Spanish, this is German, whatever it might be. There's sentiment analysis, where it can look at a block of text and say, okay, this block of text is mostly positive, or this is a negative, or this is neutral in its tone and its intent. There's text recognition, where it can go into images and pull out blocks of text in an image. There's translation, where it can translate from one language to another. And then there's, I believe it's still in preview, is the GPT integration. So it's basically integrating with ChatGPT. And those are the ones that are all pre-built. So basically you just plug it right in and you go with very minimal setup needed as far as AI Builder goes. And then there are the custom AI models. And those are the ones where you kind of have to create your own model. And it has helpers to help you get started, and we'll walk through some of that as we go through this. But it's basically saying, okay, for category classification, it says, okay, there's the basic one built out of the box, but say that's not enough for you. Say you need to identify other things, um, and it will allow you to create a model around that. So, for instance, if an email comes in to a general email address in your company, and you need to figure out which department that email should be forwarded to. And maybe the pre-built stuff out of the box gives you a certain list of departments, but you say, okay, but I've got these other departments that don't work with that pre-built model. So you can create your own categories on top of like the built-in category classification. Again, and there's entity extraction. Again, same thing. If the pre-built model isn't enough for you, if you need some customized version of that, then it allows you to create your own. There's document processing. So what that one does is it lets you look at an incoming document, maybe a PDF or a Word document or something like that, or actually just PDF documents basically, and say, okay, this is an invoice from this client, and here's the values that I need to pull out of that. Here's an address. Here's a name. Here's an account number. Here's the list of line items as part of the invoice. It's very useful especially for processing invoices, especially if you get an emailed invoice and it's the same design essentially, month after month, and most of the time these days you have somebody who's hand entering that information, even though it comes in a digital format. You've got somebody that still has to look at that and says, okay, then they type it all into your CRM or your sales system or whatever it might be, your ERP. Well, AI Builder lets you automate that and says, okay, it can automatically pull out all the information you need from that, automatically post that to your ERP, so that you don't need any human manual intervention to hand type that. And what that lets you do is, obviously if somebody's hand typing in, there's bound to be mistakes here and there. So it lets you automate that process, and then you can just do like spot checking, and you can assume that most of it's going to be valid and in place. The next thing is object detection. This is one where, again, it looks at images and, maybe the basic stuff that's out of the box doesn't identify things that you need to identify. This lets you create a custom model, train it, say, okay, here's how to recognize this and that, the other, whatever it might be. And then prediction model, that one's a very basic look at, like the last 6 months of data or last 12 months of data in a database and predict what the next 6 weeks are going to be like, or the next 6 months are going to be like. You could use it to like predict sales information, or maybe use it to identify these categories of customers are the people who buy the most from me, so maybe my next marketing campaign should be targeted to those people specifically as a subset of my customer base. That kind of thing. It's very basic, but it does gives you and basically all of this is very basic. It's not intended for real in-depth, heavy-duty kind of stuff. Like I said, as with the rest of Power Automate, this is some stuff that helps you to get started with AI capabilities within your processes, and it lets you do some very basic things very well. So all that. So that's basically what's available in AI Builder right now. So the process overview, generally speaking, like I mentioned, it's a simplified interface between Power Automate and Power Apps that lets you make use of several of the capabilities that are available in Azure AI services. It's what they used to call Azure Cognitive Services. They call it AI services now because we know Microsoft loves to rename things. But AI Builder, basically what it does is it takes your input, whatever that might be. It might be from a database, might be images, might be text blocks, passes that through that simplified interface into AI services, and then you get a response back. And most of the time that response comes back in the form of JSON data. And I'll show you an example of that here. So this is the kind of, these are examples of the kind of output that you would get back from that service. So for instance, the first one, you can see it's got some fields in it. Some, there's a name, there's an email address, what that email address is. If there are things like, if it's coming from an image, then there'll be information about where in that image that information is at. It just depends on the type of data and what you're doing. For instance, the top right over there, that's kind of a response to or on the right side is this response to be like sentiment analysis. So for that, I'll say, okay, for that block of text, the sentiment was mostly positive. So let's say 97% indication of positive, 3% indication of neutral, and 1%. And those are basically confidence scores. It'll be from 0 to 1. So let's say I'm 97% positive that this is or 97% confident that this is positive text. Or in the lower example, I'm 69% positive that this is, or 69% confident that this is positive text. So it gives you that confidence score for things like that, where there's some kind of question about that kind of thing. So saying, I think this is mostly positive, I think this is mostly negative, or whatever it might be. So those are the kind of results that you'll get back from these various processes, and then you can use them however you need to in your flow, whether it's controlling what you do next, whether it's moving that information, for instance, with the invoice processing. Then you have got that information, and you can pass that into your ERP or your CRM, whatever it might be. All right, so that's enough talking about what the from a high level, what Power Automate's AI Builder will let you do. So let's get into some actual demos and start showing those capabilities. So we're starting here with the interface to Power Automate. And this is the interface as it is kind of when you first log in. This is the screen that you'll come up with. And there's a bunch of menu items here. And I won't go through all these. I've got other videos which do that, which you can check out. But for the AI Builder information, what you're going to do is go down here to AI Hub. Now, if you don't see AI Hub in your list, then you do not have a license to AI Builder, or it might be hidden under More. So you can check that, and you can look in here to see if AI Hub shows up, because it doesn't always show everything at once. If you don't even see it under the More tab, then that means you don't have a license, which includes AI Builder. AI Builder is part of the premium license. So if you have a free level, or if you have, and I'll talk more about licensing in the end, but basically if you have the basic license or the free license, you do not have access to Power Automate. Or sorry, you do not have access to AI Builder. It requires at least the enhanced license or the premium license, or requires that your tenant admin has subscribed to AI Builder specifically, which is another add-on that's available. But if you have access to it, then you'll see AI Hub here, and you can click on that. And this will bring in some of your basic interface here. So what you'll see, if you've created some models already, you'll see that kind of thing here. If you have not, then you won't see anything there. You'll just see things like this, where you can create new ones from scratch. You can also create them as part of just creating a uh, uh, new flow like you would any other flow. So say if I wanted to create something from scratch, then I can go and create. I can do, let's do an instant cloud flow. So we're going to trigger it manually. And we're going to say, when you click a button, and we're going to call this, let's do a demo of a business card reader. Click create. So let's decide what our input's going to be. So what we're going to pass in is a file, and it's going to be an image file. You'll take your phone, you'll take a picture of that business card, and we'll do that. I don't think we need any other inputs. Let's go ahead and just click save. Oh, at least one action. Okay. So let's add an action here. And we're going to say, let's just email the results here. So let's search for email. And we're going to send an email. And business card. Then we'll come back and add to the body here in a little bit. You are making me put something in here, so test. Okay, so we've got that, those first two steps, but we actually need a step in between here. It's still saving here. All right, so let's add an action in between. So we're going to go into AI Builder. So when you add an action, you're going to look for AI Builder, or you can type in and search for it. So let's click AI Builder. And we're going to extract information from a business card. So let's click that. So file type detect automatically, select the business card image. So for that, we're going to take our output from our trigger. So file content. And we're going to click save. So it's very basic, basic level. That's really all you need to do. Most of the information, for instance, the business card reader, most of the information that's on that business card, it will be able to detect that automatically. So let's then go back in here, and I can show you some examples of things that it's going to show. So let's add so you click here, you can see a bunch of information that might be pulled out of the business card. So let's say, first name, last name, we'll go with the full address, and see what else might be here. Company name, and website, and let's get the email as well. So when it looks at that image of the business card, it will identify automatically most of that information. It's not perfect, but it does a pretty good job of spotting and figuring out what that information is and where it is on the card, and then pulling that information out so that you can make use of it. Say you want to take a picture of a card, just to automatically add that information to your CRM system or something like that. So let's go ahead and save that, and we're going to go ahead and test it. Okay, so let's do test. Test manually. Oh, I need to sign in apparently. All right, so let's import the image. Okay, so you can see here I've got a file with, or a folder with some images of business cards in it. I'm not taking actual images here, but these are some demo images that are available to be used. So let's just pick one at random here and run our flow. So the flow is running now, and as it's coming through here, you can see it doing various things. So let me show you what that business card looks like first while that's running. Okay, so here is here's the business card image that we're making use of. So you can see we've got a phone number, we've got a name, excuse me, we've got an email address, we've got a website, we've got a street address. So it's various pieces of information that are available on this card. So let's look at what it pulled out here. So if we click on that, we can see the outputs here. So let's click download to look at the outputs. So you can see it's that JSON text that we're looking at here. So there's a bunch of information. There's, it's found a work phone, found another phone number, found a company name. So it's got a full address here. So you can see in various things, and for each of these, you can see it's got this bounding box, which gives you the coordinates of where it found it at. So you can see the top, how wide, how high, the left corner. So it gives you the top left corner, and that gives you the width and the height. And it's always a rectangular box, the bounding box of where it found the object in that text. So then we can see the email that was sent out. So it's saying it sent an email out, which included a number of things. Here are the outputs. So that's a very simple kind of getting started demonstration of the capabilities of AI Builder. So let's look at another example now. So what about like an identity reader? So let's go back here. Let's create another flow. Same kind of things. We're going to do a manual trigger. Create. So again, with this one, we're going to add a file as the input. And then we're going to go in here and to AI Builder. And we're going to do identity. So extract information from identity documents. So for our input document, we're going to take again the output, file content bytes. See what we got so far. And then let's just do that for now. So I don't want to email that or send that somewhere. And we're not going to, again, we're not going to use actual ID. They've got demo images that you can use. But you can see it took me all of, 30 seconds to create that flow, to get that information. So let's go up here to our identity one. So here's like a sample passport. And we'll run that. Again, to look at that image here, show you what the image looks like. So you can see here, this is a sample passport. It's got like an ID number, name. It's got the code down here, some dates on it. It's various information about this fictional person. And we can look at the outputs here. one's a little hard to read because it doesn't do it as clear in text here. Let's copy that out into a notepad. Okay. So we've got our JSON text that's the output here. So again, you can see the styles. You can see the various things that it found. For instance, sex information, female. What else we got here? Date of expiration, first name, nationality, USA, last name, traveler, and so on and so forth. So you can see the data that was automatically picked out of that and didn't have to do anything except some very simple setup. So I could take that information if I wanted to, and then I could throw it into my Dynamics or Salesforce or whatever it is, our HR system, wherever it is you need to send that information to, you can put it out there. So let's do another example here. So let's look at some OCR stuff. So again, do some image identification here, and then after this one we'll get into a more complex demo here. So OCR demo, OCR. So again, for that we're going to add a file input, and we're going to go AI Builder. So you can either do that, or so in this case it's going to be recognized text in an image or PDF document. Or if I wanted to search for it manually, I could I could type in here into recognize text. There we go. So for our source, I'm going to take the file content bytes. And for this, it'll accept most images or PDF files to get that text. So let's just save that and test it. Again, we're not going to do anything with the output, but we're just going to show you how easy it is to get started, get going. Again, run a manual test. And I'm going to go into my sample data folder here. Let's just pick one of these at random. Okay, our flow is running. Give that just a minute to run to give us our output. All right, it's done there. So here are our outputs. So you see, again, this is the same format. And again, let's make that a little easier to read, putting it in our notepad. So let's go back up here to the top. So you can see, here's the text that it pulled out. And if there are, like multiple paragraphs, if the text is in different locations, it will pull out each of those as a block. And it will recognize things, like line breaks and things like that. And for each of those texts, it'll tell you where it found that information at. What the bounding box around that is. So, even if the text is not all in a single block, if it's in different locations, it'll pick out each of those. Now, the difficult part with that is then you have to kind of piece it back together from those various outputs. It doesn't, give it to you all in one single stream. So you may have to come up with some kind of process for saying, okay, it's given me 7 different blocks of text. How do I piece those blocks of text back together again into a single set of text? So not, perfectly ideal. It's more for it's not for really well for handling like pages of text, but like for looking at like an advertisement, picking out various pieces of text in an advertisement, or some kind of image that has little bits of text here and there and everywhere. And that's kind of where the best solution is for that. Again, let's look at let's look at the form recognition now, like the invoice processing kind of thing. So this is one where you kind of need to teach it. So um, all these up to this point have been built-in models, things that you don't have to do anything with to make them work. So for the next demo, we're going to look at uh, uh, creating a model and training it how to work, training it how to recognize the information in for instance, in this particular case, the invoices. So let's start with our sample invoice. Let's take a look at that. I'll show you an example of that. So here's a sample invoice that we're going to work with. In this particular case, we've got a date, we've got an invoice number, we've got information. In this particular case, this is the vendor, information about the vendor. And then there's the information about the customer, customer ID. We've got a salesperson, we've got payment terms, we've got a table essentially of line items. We've got a subtotal, sales tax, and a total amount. So that's the sample invoice that we're going to be working with. So let's see how to put that together. So um, again, we're going to do an instant cloud flow. And you could have, for any of these, you could have the trigger be whatever it is that you want. It could be, an email comes in, a file gets dropped somewhere. Any of the triggers that Power Automate lets you use is something that you can use the trigger. You don't have to manually, take these images like I'm doing with these. But it's just the easiest for the demo purposes to do it this way. So let's create that. So again, we're going to have an image. And we'll come back to this in a minute. Okay. In this particular case, we're going to extract entities from text with one of your custom models. And that's one way that you could do it. Or actually, we're going to use extract information from invoices. So there is kind of a pre-built model that can be done with invoices. Sometimes it works great, sometimes it doesn't, depends on the invoice format. In this particular case, I'm going to show you how to create a custom model. So in this particular case, we're not going to approach it from this general approach. So let's go over here. Let's go back. Yeah, we're going to abandon this one for now. We'll go back over here to AI Hub. So when you're going to create a model from scratch, what you need is a number of examples of that model. So I showed you one image. That's actually just one of about 6 or 7 different samples of that particular invoice. For each of the models that you're going to create, you're going to need 2 blocks of data. You're going to need a block of training data, and then you're going to need a block of testing data. And you need to make sure that those 2 are separate, different things. So, for instance, if you're looking at images, you need to make sure that your set of training images is different from your set of AI or set of testing images. That way, you can make sure that the testing is valid. Because if your test images are the same as your training images, it's going to say, "Oh, I've already seen this," and of course, your testing is going to be good. It's going to be successful, and that's not going to tell you whether or not your model actually works. So you need to make sure that your training data and your testing data are separate and different things. In this particular case, let's go ahead and work with some AI models here. We're going to extract information from invoices. So there's a pre-built model, or you can do a custom model. In this particular case, we're going to create a custom model. Okay, so as I mentioned, there is a pre-built model, and it works okay sometimes. It just depends on the invoice. But in this particular case, I want to show you how to create a custom model. So we're going to do extracting custom information from documents. And when you are creating these custom models, AI Builder will give you a kind of a wizard to step you through the process one step at a time. Say, okay, um, first you do this, then you do this, then you do this, and then it'll walk you through, setting up your model, and then it'll walk you through the training process, saying, okay, first image, where is this information at on this image? Second image, where is this information at on this image? And it'll step you through that training process one after another until it has gotten to a point where it feels like it's been trained enough. And I'll show you an example of that here as we go through it. So in this particular case, we're going to create a custom model. And it takes just a minute to spin up here. So when you're creating these custom models, the first thing you're going to be doing is saying, okay, what are the pieces of information that I need to pull out of that model or pull out of that image? Um, so for documents, we're going to look at invoices. So you can see some examples here. So the next thing we're going to do is choosing the information to extract. So you can see it already knows that for an invoice, there are certain things that we're going to be looking for. We're just going to go ahead and keep these defaults in here. You can also add your own custom information. So maybe I need to look for a signature. Maybe I need to look for a table of data of some sort that's not, standard or default kind of thing. And you can see the full list of the stuff here that's part of this default model. You can tell it, from this default ones, what ones you're going to look for, and that kind of thing. So for this stuff, if you want to change the default, or sorry, there's the defaults, and then you can add your own thing, or you can edit these as well. So if you want to name it something else, or tell it if it's a different format, say for instance, generally most of the time it will automatically identify what it is in your particular culture. So for instance, in the U.S., we use a dot as a decimal separator, whereas in certain other areas, a lot of the other areas of the world, it's the opposite. They use a comma as the separator between the dollars and cents or the whatever it is. We're just going to leave all the defaults here, but you could add your own custom things. And then there's collections. So if you have different formats of invoices, you might put them into different collections. So maybe you want to train the model to handle 7 different types of invoices that are coming in. Then you put each into a collection, and for each of those, you'll have samples and training kind of thing. But for this, we're just going to create a single collection, and we're going to add some documents to it. And there are requirements as far as the documents as to what you can include and what you can use. There are basically, file types and size limits. That's essentially what it is. Go to invoices, and we're going to use the ADATM test set. And then we're going to use these 5 to train. So it'll upload the documents. Go through those one at a time. And once those are uploaded, you can do done. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to tag the information. So it's going to pull these up one at a time. It's going to say for each of these documents, you need to go through and identify the various pieces of information. And it will try to identify those itself first. And you can see that it's already spotted, okay, here's a date, here's an invoice number, here's various things. And I'll give you some helpers here, but this is the customer address. So identified this as the customer address recipient. Here's the payment terms. Here's the invoice number or invoice ID, and all that kind of stuff. And then here's the line item information in the table, and those various things. So if you're good with the things that it's identified by itself, then you can say, okay, that's good. Let's move to the next one. And it'll look at that, and again, it'll automatically identify. So what if you want to identify something yourself? So maybe, customer name, if you want to identify something. So I'm going to drag a box around something. In this particular case, because I'm tagging this multiple times, you're going to have overlapping things. But just to show you how it works, if you wanted to identify that, then I could select a field for that to be, or for what field I think that is. I'll show you a better example of that here. So let's go over this here. This is going to be the, I didn't put in vendor address. Let's just call this vendor address instead of that. So say, okay, that's a vendor address. And you can see now there's a box around it. And as I click on that, I'm saying this is included as part of the vendor address. So for the rest of these, I'm just going to leave the defaults. And once you have tagged all of the documents in your collection, then, okay, there we go. Now the next button is saying, okay, I've tagged all of my documents. I've taught it essentially how to identify the things in the various documents. So let's go ahead and click train. And training the model, it'll basically say, okay, for all this training information that you've provided to me, I'm now going to look at this and I'm going to learn how to use that information to apply that model to future examples. So you can see the models, this one has probably already done. So you can see the stats here, it's still training. So it can take anywhere from, a half a minute to a minute, depending on the size of the model. It can take, I've seen it go as long as a half an hour in training the model. Generally not much longer than that. It depends on how much data you've trod it and how busy the system is, essentially. So we'll give that a couple minutes and we'll come back when it's ready to apply that model. All right, so that took about a minute to train the model. So it's ready to go now. So what we can do is open up our model. And what it will give you is some details about the information, or details about the model itself. So one of the things it'll show you is the accuracy score. So it's saying, okay, based on the training information that you gave me, I think that this model is 90%, 96% accurate. When you are going to apply it. And that the score is relatively accurate in my experience most of the time. So you can feel, with this, you can feel pretty confident that it's going to correctly identify everything on that invoice. So long as the invoice format doesn't change dramatically, it should be fine in going forward. So you can see the things about the various details. So, for instance, you saw that one where I changed the vendor address that I added that additional thing. So it's saying, excuse me, in general, I'm going to be about 80% confident that I've got the correct vendor address. Whereas like line items, it's going to be 99% confident, and so on and so forth. It'll give you some more details about that, and you can click in here to see even more information about how it's reaching, this score and how it's the various information it's going to pull out and all that. So again, on the score, you can see more details there. So you can see information about the training that you did. Anything that might have questions about, it'll highlight for you. Say, okay, maybe you want to spend some more time training the vendor address piece of the information, making sure that you have that correct. So we've got that information there. So before you can actually use a model in a flow, you have to publish it. So we're going to go ahead and click publish here. And what that does is it basically says, okay, this version is now the current version of this model. So what you can do is you can use that current version in your flows, but you can also continue to test and train that model if you want to add additional things. So maybe, the invoice format changed and you want to, go back in and add some more training information or training samples that you can use to train it to pick up those additional pieces of information, or you know, find the information that's in a different location, kind of thing. Um, so you can continue enhancing the model while a version of the model is being used in your actual flows or Power Apps. And you can use these models in Power Automate or Power Apps, either one. It's supported in both. So if you want to do a quick test, you can do a test of an image. So in this particular case, I've got some testing, or I've got a testing image. And for the quick test, it'll actually show you, and it'll highlight on here the various things it found. So here's the address, found the invoice ID, invoice date, recipient address, and so on and so forth. So you can do a quick test to kind of get an idea of how it's going to work. So let's go ahead and use the model in a flow. So we're going to build a flow and say, okay, how do you receive the documents? In this particular case, let's just click other. We're going to manually upload it. So in this case, it's saying, okay, here's a suggestion. I'm going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and use that default there. So it creates this sample flow based on the information. And it's actually a lot more complicated than I was planning on doing. But in this particular case, we're going to upload the file. And I won't go through this whole thing setting this up, but you can use this to create flows. You can use that model to create flows based on that. Excuse me. So, that's a good example of how you can create that custom model and turn it into a flow or use it in your flows. So let me show you one more example here, and this is one that I've already created. And I think it's this one. Actually, let's go under my AI hub. Okay, so here's one more. This one's using object detection in images. So let me show you that one here. Take just a minute to load that up. All right, so in this particular thing, I've got 4 Lego minifigures. One's Gimli, there's a red spaceman, white spaceman, and a wizard. And I want to identify those people in various images. So I've identified, those are the 4 objects I'm going to do. I've got 10 images in my test set here. So for tagging them in the image, so you can see I've already tagged 4 of these images, but the others I haven't. So for instance, if I go in here, if I want to identify them, so for training this model, so you just drag a box around the object in the image, and then it pops this up and says, okay, what is this? So I click on that, it's the white spaceman. I go into the next image, drag around here, that's Gimli. Drag around here, it's Gimli again. So that's basically how you tag the images or tag the objects in the various images. That's the wizard. And you can see as you're going through it, this one that I've already tagged, as you're going through it, it keeps track of your progress as you're going through. So if you see over here as you're going through it on the right, and I don't obviously have enough images here, but for instance, object identification in images, for the invoicing, you only need 5 documents to train. For the object identification in images, you need a minimum of 15 images for each of the objects that you want to identify in images. And actually, you really, if you want it to be really accurate, you need a lot more. So if you're doing the object identification images, you want to have, uh, as I mentioned, so you're tagging more than 50 images for each object is even better. And um, so, for the object identification images, you need a lot of training data. You need a lot of pictures of the object. And those pictures should be varied. So, for instance, if you have different colors of the object, you should have, the different colors. You should have them from different angles. You should have different lighting conditions. You should have different backgrounds. So you can see on all these images, they're all against on a white piece of paper. That's not going to be a very good training model example. You want to have a bunch of different backgrounds. So a dark background, a light background, a varied background, a pattern background, a clear background, and various things, so that the more of those variations that you have of that object and from different angles, different lighting conditions, as I mentioned, the better your model is going to be. So at absolute minimum, you need 15 images of each object. I'll tell you right now, that's not going to be anywhere near enough. You really do need the 50 images of each object. You'll get a certain percentage of accuracy if you only do the minimum for each, but your model is not going to be very effective in when you get to your production state. So you want to make sure that you're training the model, giving the model the best chance that it has to succeed. Um, and yeah, that takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, but the more time and effort that you spend up front, the more successful your model is going to be. So if you're tagging multiple objects in an image, so let's start with this one. There's the white spaceman. There's the wizard. There's Gimli. And it's a little harder because he's back behind. Red spaceman. So you can't have overlapping boxes in your object. And you want to have those kinds of images in here as well in your training data. You want to have objects, or you want to have images where the object is partially occluded by something else. So if it's behind, not just different angles, different lighting conditions, but also when it's partially covered up, that'll help it to have a much more effective training model in the long run. So for now, I'm done tagging. Now this obviously is not ready because I don't have enough images. But if I come back here to save and close that, if I come back here to this one, I think is the one that I created for another conference. Let's open that up. I think this one has the minimum. Nope, I didn't do enough on that one either. Where is this one? I do have another set of models that I created for recognizing dice in images. And I think that's what this one is. Yeah, there we go. So here I've got a model where I've got different types of dice, D10, a D12, D20, and so on and so forth. And I used 35 images to train. Again, nowhere near enough, but I've at least hit the minimums for this one. So for instance, on this, I've got a D8. I've got, various different things here, D6, and so on and so forth. And actually, I don't have enough on this one either. Where's the one? I think it might be in a different user that I've got one where I've got the full set. But if you look at these as you work with them, you need, like I say, as many images as possible. And then once you've got them in there, yeah, it's not that one. Okay. Apparently I don't have that one with me right now in this user. Okay, here I found one. This is the full the Lego minifig that I did. So you can see I added 84 images for this one. So you can see I've got a bunch of different images here, different angles, and so on. got a lot of more there. Again, it's not ideal because I use the white background for all of these, but you can see ones where I've got both individually and groups. A lot of them were partially occluded, that kind of thing. So for this one, I'm going to just exit out of this one. I don't want to make any changes to it. Okay, why? Do not go back out. Let's just go ahead and save it. So one of the things that you can, let's discard the draft of that. So one of the things I mentioned before is that you once you publish a model, you can continue to make updates to it, and as you go back into it and you start making changes, it basically creates a new draft, as you saw there. And I just went and discarded it because I don't want to make any changes to it. But one of the things it'll tell you is okay, performance score, if it doesn't think that it's accurate, it'll tell you that. And it'll say, okay, this doesn't look quite right. Um, and I could do a test. I could, try various things. But if it doesn't think that the score is accurate, in this particular case, it's probably because I used the white background for everything. Even though I used, 84 different images, and a lot of those images can be applied to more than one object because there are multiple objects in the images and there are various things. And it'll tell you that. It'll say, okay, I don't really think that's going to be great. So it gives you some suggestions and some guidance on your performance here. In this particular case here, I've got a model and figuring out the right training amount of information, right, the training quantity of images to achieve the best possible score you can. It's a difficult thing. It's something you just have to kind of practice and try different things and see how that affects your model. And you keep going through it until you find the best balance. If you have a score that says 100, that's never right. It's never that good. Uh, Object recognition is uh, not that capable. So you always want to make sure that you're kind of finding the best balance. So like a score of 96, 95%, that's usually about the best that you can achieve in realistic circumstances. And that's, if you've trained, a couple hundred images, at least, of which, at least 50, 60, 70 of each object, and gone through that again with the different lighting conditions, different angles, different backgrounds and whatnot. Generally about the best you can expect is somewhere in the mid 90s as far as percent scores, and that's really good if you can achieve that. So that's and again I could use this model in a flow or in a Power Automate or a Power App of some kind, where I'd pass in pictures of these objects of the minifigs, and I would say, okay, what do you see in these? And it gives me that JSON data back. Say, okay, I see this object here in this particular box at this location, and you could use that for whatever purpose it is. A lot of the use cases for this kind of thing is being able to identify, for instance, products in images on the. Maybe you want to be scanning Twitter for people who are showing pictures of your products, kind of thing. Um, Whatever it might be. Maybe you have something that you've got, like in a retail store, you might have a robot going up and down the aisles taking pictures of objects on the shelves and saying, okay, I see this particular product in this location, kind of thing, and comparing that against where you expect to see it at to see, is this being merchandised in the correct way, kind of thing. There are a lot of different potential use cases for that process. So a lot of different ideas of things that you can do. So that's kind of a high level look at creating these models and being able to use them. So let's talk from a little bit about licensing here at the end. So I mentioned Power Automate is part of the premium license. So like The free license does not give you access to Power Automate. There are various basic licenses. So, for instance, the Power Automate license that comes with Dynamics does not include Power Automate, that kind of thing. So there are a lot of different Power Automate licenses, Power App licenses out there. Not all of them include um, uh, uh, access to AI Builder. Um, so again, the premium one gives you a certain number of credits. Each Power Automate call or each AI Builder call that you make uses a certain number of credits, and the number of credits that's being used depends on what you're doing. It depends on the model that you're using. It depends on whether you're using the pre-built or the training ones. Actually, putting in the effort to train your model actually uses credits as well. So you have a certain number of credits per month per license. And most of the time, those credits can either be pooled and again, it depends on the setup and your tenant and your environment, but most of the time those credits can either be pooled at the user level or at the tenant level. You cannot transfer license or you cannot transfer credits across tenants. So if you have multiple tenants, the credits all go to that one tenant. Uh, there are a lot of different nuances that you have to understand. And then at the tenant level, so there are credits that are available per license. At the tenant level, for $500 a month, you can get 1,000,000 credits that can be used across your tenant. And then in Dynamics, there is a production. You get a certain number of credits for the production environment that it can be used across that environment. So it's not tied to the users; it's just tied to that production environment. And it's only for production environments. You don't get any of the credits for any of the lower level environments in Dynamics. You have to buy those separately. So it's a little funky there. Uh, it's actually much simpler licensing than it used to be, but it's still overly complex. But that's how Microsoft does things, so you kind of have to get used to it. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate you watching. And hope you got something out of this presentation on AI Builder and Power Automate and Power Apps. And thank you. If you have any further questions, you can find me at my personal blog there at bearblake.dev or on LinkedIn. You can connect with me. Feel free to connect. Or I've got some of these videos, and I'm continuing to expand the videos that I've got out on my YouTube channel. So you can find more there. And thank you.